She was driving home after court in her black Mercedes, a judge's robe still draped over her shoulders. He saw a black woman in a luxury car parked near the government building and assumed the worst. Moments later, he'd learned she was the Attorney General. But by then, the cameras were already rolling, the crowd was watching, and his mistake had become a national headline. It was 6:41 p.m. on a humid Columbia evening when Officer Travis Brenner turned down Gervais Street and spotted a black Mercedes parked in a government-only zone. He took another sip from his dented thermos, the coffee long gone stale, and slowed the cruiser. The reserve signs were clear. Parking here was for high-ranking state officials only, the kind of people he didn't expect to see behind that particular wheel. The woman behind the glass had already rolled down her window when he approached. She didn't look startled. She didn't reach for anything. Instead, she stared at him with calm, judicial stillness. "Good evening, officer," she said clearly, the folds of her black robe visible from the shoulders up. "Is there a problem?" He paused. For a moment, just one, he hesitated. "Ma'am, we received a report of an unauthorized vehicle parked near the district attorney's reserve section. I need to confirm identification." "I'm Renee Mallory," she replied, without breaking eye contact. "Attorney General of South Carolina." Her voice didn't rise. She simply reached into her bag and passed him both her driver's license and state-issued credentials. "This is my assigned parking zone." He took the documents, but didn't look at them right away. Something about her certainty, about how unbothered she seemed, put him on edge. His eyes scanned her Mercedes again, as if the car might confess something the paperwork wouldn't. Then he turned and walked back to his cruiser, pretending not to notice the three teenagers on the opposite sidewalk, already lifting their phones. Inside, the car. The scanner buzzed. He ran her ID. Everything matched. No flags, no alerts. Just the highest-ranking law enforcement officer in the state, legally parked, calm, compliant, and not going anywhere. Still, something kept him from ending. The stop. Back at her window, he didn't hand the papers back. "How long have you had this vehicle?" he asked. "Since last year," she answered flatly. "Purchased from Midland's Mercedes. Is that relevant?" He didn't answer, but his hand hovered just near his belt. From across the street, someone called out, "Yo, that's the AG, you're really messing up now!" But Travis wasn't backing off, not yet. And with every second he stalled, the crowd thickened, the phones kept rolling, and the story spiraled past the point of no return. He could have walked away. The ID was valid, the parking was legal, and the explanation was crystal clear. But Officer Travis Brenner didn't walk away. Instead, he circled back to her window, slower this time, his voice clipped but forced into something almost polite. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle." Her eyes didn't move. "Is that a lawful order, officer?" "Yes," he said too quickly, his hand shifting ever so slightly toward his belt. A pause followed, not of confusion, but calculation. She kept her hands on the wheel. "Are you detaining me?" He hesitated. That moment, that breath where everything could have de-escalated, passed. "I'm asking you to comply." And just like that, the balance of power tilted. Not because she was loud, not because she resisted, but because she didn't. Her stillness became the statement, her restraint, the spotlight, and as her voice rose just enough to carry, the bystanders turned into witnesses. "I am Attorney General Renee Mallory. My credentials have been verified. My vehicle is legally parked. You are now unlawfully detaining me." He flinched. Not enough for the cameras to catch, but enough for her to notice. A teen across the street shouted, "Yo, she the Attorney General, man! Let her go!" Brenner's eyes darted to the crowd. More phones were out. He could feel the red light from a live stream pointed squarely at him. A woman's voice called out, "She's the one who spoke at my sister's graduation. She's no criminal." But Brenner didn't step back. Instead, he stood straighter, trying to salvage control. "We've had issues with vehicles being misused in this area, just checking all angles." "You're not checking," Renee replied, voice even. "You're assuming, and I'm the one paying the price." Her words hit harder than a shout. They didn't accuse, they exposed. Then came the shift. Officer Marcy Keller's patrol car pulled into view, tires crunching the gravel. She stepped out fast, sharp ponytail, quicker eyes. One glance was enough. The robe, the woman, the crowd, the tone. "Travis," she said under her breath, pulling. Up beside him. "What's going on?" "Possible misuse of government parking." ID was inconclusive. No, it wasn't. Marcy peered into the car. "That's the Attorney General." "I know." "Then why is she still outside the law, but inside your suspicion?" He didn't answer. The tension wasn't just between him and Mallory anymore. It was between him and the reality he refused to face. Renee rolled her window lower and said clearly, "Officer Keller, I trust you've reviewed the dispatch report." Marcy nodded. "Yes, ma'am. It all checks out." "Then I believe I've been delayed long enough." Travis didn't budge. He had crossed the line, and he knew it, but what he hadn't realized was that the ground had shifted beneath him. He wasn't the one in control anymore. The phones, the people, the law, and the woman who embodied it had turned the spotlight back on him, and all he could do was stand there and watch his certainty unravel. By sunrise, it was already viral. A 4-minute clip from a teen's live stream racked up over 300,000 views overnight. The comments flooded in, some shocked, some furious, but all asking the same question: how does a sitting attorney general get pulled out of her car in her own assigned parking space? And no one intervenes until it's almost too late? Local media picked it up first. Then national outlets followed. South Carolina's top prosecutor racially profiled during routine check. Attorney General Renee Mallory confronted in her own lot. The headlines weren't just headlines. They were signals that something far deeper had broken loose. Inside the Columbia Police Department, the morning briefing felt like a funeral. Chief Harold Epps didn't waste time. He walked in, no smile, no coffee. Just a newspaper in one hand and a printed still from the body cam in the other. "This," he said, sliding it onto the table, "is what we're dealing with today." The image was grainy but unmistakable. Travis standing face to face with Judge Mallory, her hands calmly at her sides, the crowd behind her, and every phone recording. It wasn't just embarrassing. It was damning. Travis sat in the corner, silent, stiff, trying not to shift in his seat. Everyone knew. No one said it. But all eyes drifted, at him and at Officer Marcy Keller, the only one who'd stepped in before it got worse. Chief Epps looked directly at Travis. "You filed your incident report?" "Yes, sir. I read it. It doesn't match the footage." No defense came, just a beat of silence that confirmed everything. "You're on administrative leave effective immediately. Internal Affairs is opening a review." "Am I being investigated for misconduct?" "Not yet," Epps replied. "But you're being watched." Across town, Renee Mallory sat alone at her kitchen table, still in sweats, her court robe folded over a chair. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Reporters, colleagues, friends. But she answered none. Instead, she played the video back. Once, then again, watching herself not through her own eyes, but through the world's. The moment the officer reached for her wrist. The moment she stepped out of the car, not out of fear, but because silence wasn't safe anymore. It wasn't the first time. Her father, Thomas Parker, had worn a Columbia patrolman's badge in the 70s. A soft-spoken man, with a tall frame and tired eyes. She remembered his words. "The robe doesn't change how some people see you. They'll look past it." She had believed if she worked hard enough, climbed high enough, she could outgrow that truth. but last night proved it still waited. For her, just in a more expensive parking lot. By noon, protesters had gathered outside the precinct. Not a mob, but a message. Signs read, "Power, permission, and who judges the enforcers." One had already gone viral, a blown-up photo of her stepping out of the Mercedes, robe billowing in the wind, eyes locked on Brenner like she was delivering a verdict. Inside, Travis packed up his things, a cardboard box, a photo of his daughter from last summer, and a patrol journal he wasn't sure he'd ever use again. When Marcy appeared at the door, she didn't gloat. She just said, "You ever think maybe what feels normal to you is what needs fixing?" He nodded once, slowly. But reflection didn't erase reality. And Columbia wasn't done asking hard questions, because this wasn't about one bad call. It was about a system that made the wrong call feel ordinary, until the wrong woman in the wrong car reminded everyone what the law is supposed to mean. The hearing wasn't held in some grand courthouse with marble columns and wood-paneled walls. It took place in a municipal building off Hardin Street, cramped, hot, and humming with tension. Inside, Judge Renee Mallory sat not behind a bench, but in front of a committee, as a witness. Her posture didn't change, still upright, composed, as if the courtroom had followed her here. Travis Brenner entered through a side door, not in uniform but in civilian clothes, a navy jacket, khakis, shoulders tight like he was trying to shrink. No one booed, no one clapped, but the silence was sharp, like everyone was holding a mirror up to the system and waiting to see if it would look away. The Oversight Committee played the body cam footage. It rolled without commentary but didn't need any. The stop, the questions, the escalating tone, the moment he reached for her wrist. Then, the glitch. 40 seconds of silence, a gap too convenient. Committee Chair Vera Lindell looked up from the playback. "Officer Brenner, can you explain why your body cam audio dropped?" I don't know. Might have been a malfunction," he replied, voice low. She tapped her pen against the desk. "Department logs show your hand hit the mute toggle at exactly that time." Travis didn't speak. He didn't have to. The silence had already answered. Then it was Renee's turn. She didn't speak in anger. She didn't raise her voice. She told them what happened, clearly, precisely, the same way she might outline a legal precedent. "Every day I determine whether someone is trustworthy, whether they deserve leniency or must face consequences. But what I faced in that parking lot wasn't about trust. It was about assumption. And it reminded me that even when you are the law, some people will only see the body you live in." She looked directly at the panel, her voice unwavering. "Authority must answer to the very system it claims to protect, or else it's not justice. It's power, unchecked." 30 minutes later, the committee returned. Chair Lindell didn't soften her tone. "Officer Brenner, the panel finds that your conduct was excessive, unsupported by evidence, and demonstrated a disregard for departmental standards. We recommend a 60-day unpaid suspension and mandatory bias retraining. Further violations will result in immediate termination." Gasps filled the room. Some said it was too harsh, others not harsh enough. But Renee didn't react. She stood, gathered her coat, and left. Outside, reporters swarmed. "Do you feel justice was served?" one shouted. She paused. "I don't believe in justice as a moment," she said. "It's a practice, and today was just one part of it." Across the street, Travis stood alone beneath a tree. Marcy joined him quietly. "You good?" He looked down. "I don't think I'm supposed to be good. I think I'm supposed to be honest," she nodded. "Then maybe you're finally starting. But accountability doesn't end with a reprimand. It begins there." The next morning, Renee arrived at the courthouse an hour early. Not to prepare for a heavy docket, but to breathe. On her desk were notes from strangers, a law student, a retired judge, a handwritten letter that simply read, You reminded me staying calm doesn't mean staying silent. At 9 a.m., a teenage boy entered for a probation review. Nervous, stiff. She asked him gently, "Do you know why you're standing here?" "Because I made a mistake," he said. "No," she replied. "You're here because you were seen. What you do next decides whether you're just watched or understood." She tapped the gavel once. Case closed. Not with punishment, but with purpose. Outside, in the same parking lot, her Mercedes waited. The same car that once sparked suspicion. Now, a symbol, not of status, but of visibility, of a woman who didn't flinch when the badge misread her, and who answered injustice not with fury, but with clarity. Because accountability doesn't begin with outrage. It begins with the courage to face what others look away from. In the days that followed, Columbia didn't just move on, it recalibrated. Town halls filled with new faces. Students quoted her story in debate class. Local judges reviewed courtroom security protocols. But the real shift was quieter. It echoed in how people looked at the uniform and what they expected from it. Judge Renee Mallory never asked for a spotlight, but when it found her, she didn't turn away. She used it not to shame, but to illuminate, to show that the systems we claim to trust don't fix themselves. They have to be challenged, even from inside. Travis Brenner, once a cop with instincts he'd never questioned, sat in mandatory bias training weeks later. Across from him, an instructor said, "We don't unlearn fear overnight, but we start by admitting what it cost someone else." Travis had written his reflection, not because he wanted to, but because he had to. And this time, he wrote more than one sentence. As for Renee, she returned to the bench. Same robe, same calm, but with new weight in her presence. Not fear, not pride, just purpose. Because now, every decision she made carried a deeper echo of what it meant to sit in judgment when she herself had stood under it. Outside her courthouse, students began showing up, one by one, asking to shadow her for a day. When asked, "Why?" one girl said, "Because she didn't just survive it, she made it mean something. That's what Justice Reimagined looks like. It's not flashy. It doesn't come with applause. It's a woman refusing to back down when profiled. It's a system holding itself accountable when no one else will. It's a community realizing that silence is a privilege, and change starts with voice." This wasn't about one officer, or one stop, or even one woman. It was about what we choose to see and who we decide is worthy of protection. Renee Mallory didn't just demand respect. She modeled it. Calm, clear, unshaken. And that kind of power, quiet, earned, unwavering, doesn't need to yell to be heard. So the next time someone asks what justice looks like, don't point to a gavel. Point to the woman who held the law to its own standard even when it failed her, and made us all ask better questions because of it. If this story moved you, even for a moment, share it. Because voices like hers don't just inspire. They remind us who we're supposed to be. And sometimes, one voice really can redirect 1,000 others.